There is a landscape at the bottom of the world, an empire of white stretching to a horizon where sky and earth dissolve into a single frozen haze. The air, so cold it sears the lungs with every breath. Here, a wind, unimpeded across a continent of ice, accelerates to a furious velocity, scouring the surface with billions of crystalline needles. This is Antarctica, a continent entombed beneath a carapace of ice several kilometers thick, where the average annual temperature plummets to -50 degrees Celsius. There is nothing but ice, rock, and a silence so profound it rings in the ears. Now picture a lone figure in this lifeless kingdom. A geologist, bundled against the fury of the elements, brings a hammer down upon a gray, unassuming stone. The rock cracks, and there, on a fresh surface tens of millions of years old, something impossible is revealed. Not a crystal, nor the faint trace of a marine fossil. It is the clear, perfectly preserved impression of a broad, fanned leaf, the leaf of a palm tree. This single object is a profound dissonance. It is a message sealed in stone, a portal to a world that defies the very nature of this place. A world where the howl of the polar wind was once the rush of tropical rain, where the silence was broken by the cries of strange birds. A world where palm trees grew at the South Pole. To understand this relic, we must journey not across space, but through the deep chasm of time. We must rewind the planetary clock by 50 million years to an epoch known as the Eocene to witness a lost continent. To comprehend how a Garden of Eden at the edge of the world became the largest freezer on Earth. In this ancient past, the Earth is an almost alien planet. The polar ice caps, the defining features of our own time, simply do not exist. From pole to pole, the global ocean is free of ice year-round. Greenland is, in fact, green, draped in lush forests. Crocodilians and turtles thrive along the shores of a temperate Arctic Ocean. The planet is experiencing a period of extreme global warmth, a hothouse state. The engine driving this planetary furnace was an element both familiar and, in its ancient concentration, potent: carbon dioxide. Atmospheric levels were, by conservative estimates, 3 to 4, perhaps even 5 times higher than they are today. This invisible blanket transformed the entire climate system, pushing warmth to the very ends of the Earth. The palm leaf from the ice is therefore more than a curiosity. It is a testament to the planet's immense capacity for transformation. It proves that the world we inhabit is not a permanent state, but a fleeting chapter in an epic story written in rock and ice. The atmosphere of this lost epoch was a different substance entirely. Carbon dioxide levels, the very breath of the planet, hovered between 1,000 and 2,000 parts per million, a stark contrast to the 420 of our time. This dense gaseous canopy forged a planetary furnace, a greenhouse effect of unimaginable power that trapped the sun's warmth, distributing it with an almost uniform generosity across the globe. In this ancient, fevered world, the tyranny of latitude was broken. The thermal gradient between the equator and the poles, a defining feature of our own climate, was astonishingly slight. While equatorial regions simmered at a steady 35 degrees Celsius, the poles themselves basked in a climate where temperatures rarely fell below 15 or 20 degrees. It was a world without true winter. This persistent global warmth radically redrew the map. With no colossal ice sheets to lock away trillions of tons of water, the world's oceans stood some 70 meters higher than they do today. Coastlines were pushed far inland. The familiar sites of London, Amsterdam, or St. Petersburg would have been submerged territories, lost to the silent, deep blue of a vast, shallow sea. The continents themselves were adrift in their slow, inexorable tectonic ballet. North and South America were still strangers, separated by a wide seaway that allowed oceanic currents to flow unimpeded. Australia had only just begun its long, solitary voyage north, having finally sundered its connection to Antarctica. And Antarctica, the continent we now equate with absolute cold, was not yet an isolated fortress of ice. It remained tethered to South America by a final, crucial land bridge, forming a single, contiguous landmass. It was this precise confluence of geography and climate that set the stage for an ecological marvel. Great arteries of warm oceanic water, born in the crucible of the equator, flowed freely southward. This planetary circulatory system washed the shores of the great southern continent, a colossal engine of heat transfer that delivered a constant supply of warmth and moisture. It functioned as a planetary heating system, preventing the Antarctic landmass from ever truly cooling. The result was a world born from what seems to us a profound contradiction. Upon the very land that is now a byword for desolation, there flourished a world of staggering vitality, a lush, green, and impossibly rich ecosystem. A world we can now only begin to reconstruct, piecing together its story from the fossilized ghosts that scientists unearth from beneath the ice. As we approach these prehistoric shores, the familiar image of the South Pole shatters. Stepping ashore is to enter a world woven from paradox. The air is warm, impossibly humid, not the sterile, biting cold of today, but a heavy embrace saturated with the complex perfume of blossoming flora, of damp earth, and the sweet decay of fallen leaves. The water of the Southern Ocean, lapping at this coast, is a placid 22 degrees Celsius, a temperature more comfortable than many modern Mediterranean resorts. Lifting our gaze, we see the slopes of the Trans-Antarctic Mountains. Today, they are skeletal peaks of ice and naked rock, scoured by relentless winds. But then, they were cloaked to their very summits in a thick, unbroken carpet of green. We move deeper, into the heart of this lost world. This is no simple woodland. It is a subtropical rainforest, a complex, multi-layered ecosystem whose biodiversity would have rivaled the temperate forests of modern New Zealand or Chile. Our attention is immediately captured by colossal tree ferns, their delicate arching fronds painting an intricate lace against the sky. Beside them, mighty conifers of the Araucaria family stand as sentinels from an older time. This was Antarctica, not a wasteland, but a vibrant cradle of life. It serves as a profound testament to the planet's capacity for radical transformation, a silent reminder that worlds can be born and then buried under miles of ice. It proves that even the most extreme and inhospitable places on Earth today hold within them the memory of a profoundly different past, a past of warmth, of water, and of life. Perhaps the most profound dislocation in this lost world is the sight of a palm tree. They are everywhere. Slender, smooth trunks reaching for a sky that holds no ice, their vast canopies performing a languid dance in the warm, humid air. This is not a fleeting mirage, but a geological fact etched into the very stone of the continent. The whispers of this vanished world are carried on grains of fossilized pollen, microscopic evidence confirming that these heat-loving plants flourished just a few hundred kilometers from the South Pole. But this was a forest built on a foundation fundamentally alien to any we know today. Its defining feature was not the soil nor the rain, but the light. Or more precisely, its stark and unforgiving rhythm. Here, at the bottom of the world, the planet's tilt dictates an existence of absolute extremes. For 6 months, the sun never sets. For 6 months, it never rises. Imagine this forest during the great polar day. A sun that refuses to die, circling endlessly above the treetops in a relentless 6-month-long dawn. For the flora, this was a time of unparalleled opportunity. An immense, uninterrupted torrent of energy poured down from the heavens, pushing the machinery of photosynthesis into overdrive. It was a season of explosive, frenzied growth, a mad rush of flowering and fruiting as life gorged itself on the endless light. But for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Then the light fails. The sun dips below the horizon for the last time, and the great polar night descends. For half a year, the forest is plunged into a profound and near-total darkness, an umbra broken only by the cold, distant light of the moon and the stars. The temperature falls, yet not to the lethal lows of the modern era. It settles into a persistent chill, perhaps 5 to 10 degrees Celsius. This is not winter as we conceive it, not a world of snow and ice, but a long, cool, and deeply dark twilight. To endure such a cycle, life had to evolve extraordinary solutions. Many plants, it is believed, were evergreen, but their leaves were a deep, dark green, almost black, engineered to capture every last photon in the dim periods bracketing the abundance, adopted a more radical strategy. They surrendered. As the darkness approached, they would shed their foliage, shutting down their systems and entering a state of suspended animation, a profound dormancy to outlast the long gloom. This was a world breathing in a rhythm of extreme light and extreme shadow. And what of the creatures that moved through this world of extremes? The fauna of Eocene Antarctica was every bit as unique as its flora. Locked away by its isolation, the continent became a crucible for endemic life. The undergrowth rustled with primitive marsupials, distant echoes of the kangaroos and koalas yet to come, sharing the forest floor with an entire, now vanished group of South American ungulates. These were herbivores, ranging in size from a rabbit to a small sheep, grazing peacefully in the shade of giant ferns. But the true dominion of this land belonged not to the mammals, but to the birds, and among them, a titan. Dispel any image of the charming, shuffling creature of the modern ice. The penguins of the Eocene were giants. Paleontologists have unearthed them, and weighing more than 90 kilograms. They were genuine heavyweights, the size of a grown man. Living torpedoes, lethal hunters of fish and squid. Their beaks were not quaint. This was not a mere collection of survivors clinging to a hostile environment. It was a complete, intricate, and thriving ecosystem. A world that stands as a testament to life's tenacious ability to conquer the impossible, to weave a tapestry of complexity even in the face of perpetual darkness. It is a silent reminder that the most alien landscapes are not necessarily on other planets, but are buried here, deep in the memory of our own. A world of impossible warmth, bathed in the strange perpetual light of a polar summer. Here, sprawling temperate rainforests thrived, and unique forms of life, perfectly adapted to the cycle of endless day and endless night, moved through the lush undergrowth. This green world felt eternal, an unshakable kingdom that had endured for millions of years. But in the grand, unwritten ledger of geology, permanence is a fiction. For this verdant paradise, a verdict was being prepared, not in the heavens, but in the planet's molten heart. Deep within the Earth, titanic forces were already in motion, the slow, inexorable drift of tectonic plates. A movement that would forever rewrite the fate of Antarctica. To comprehend its extinction is to understand one of geology's most profound truths. The story of this continent's death is, above all, a story of isolation. For eons, Antarctica was not an island, but a cornerstone of the great southern supercontinent Gondwana. Later, as that colossal landmass fractured, it remained tethered to its neighbors, Australia and South America. These land bridges were its lifelines. They were the critical conduits that maintained its temperate climate. Imagine the planet's ocean currents as a vast circulatory system. Warm, life-giving blood pulsed from the equator, flowing south. Forced to navigate the continental barriers, this heat was delivered to the polar regions, warming them before the now chilled water returned north. Antarctica was a full participant in this global exchange, a thriving organ in a planetary body. But then, approximately 49 million years ago, the first stage of the Great Separation began. Australia, after a long and drawn-out farewell, finally broke its connection and began its slow journey north. Between it and Antarctica, the ocean flooded in, carving a new channel, the Tasmanian Gateway. This was the first toll of the bell. It allowed colder waters from the Pacific to begin their intrusion, a chilling premonition of the deep freeze to come. Yet the effect was not yet catastrophic. The primary artery, the land bridge to South America, still held firm. The decisive event, the final fatal blow to Antarctica's forests, occurred around 34 million years ago. After an age of stretching, tearing, and faulting in the Earth's crust, the continent was at last ripped from the tip of South America. Where they were once joined, a chasm opened, the Drake Passage, today one of the most turbulent stretches of water on the globe. This was a moment of truly planetary consequence. The map of the world's oceans was redrawn in an instant of geologic time. With the last land barrier removed, the ocean was now free to circumnavigate the entire Antarctic continent unimpeded. And so the most powerful and relentless ocean current on Earth was born, the Antarctic Circumpolar Current. A colossal river within the ocean, it churns endlessly from west to east, a liquid girdle wrapping the pole. Its power is almost unimaginable, transporting 100 times more water than all the world's rivers combined. This current became the executioner of the green world. It functioned as a perfect thermal barrier, a fortress of cold. It built an insurmountable wall of water, deflecting the warm equatorial currents, casting them aside before they could ever again reach the southern shore. The green world was not vanquished by a sudden cataclysm, but by the slow, inexorable drawing of a boundary. It was starved of warmth, cut off from the planet's lifeblood. It stands now as a silent testament, a continent entombed in ice, a reminder that in the intricate dance of planetary systems, connection is life, and perfect isolation is a sentence of cold. A vast cold river began to flow, a planetary barrier of water that severed Antarctica from the warm, subtropical currents bathing it from the north. For millions of years, these life-giving arteries had carried warmth to the southern continent, sustaining a world we can now barely imagine. But with the opening of the Drake Passage and the birth of the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, that ancient pact was broken. The warm waters were now deflected, cast aside by this powerful, encircling torrent. Antarctica was cast into a state of profound thermal isolation. Its colossal heating system, a network of ocean currents cultivated over eons, had been decisively shut down. Deprived of this vital influx of energy, the continent began a swift and irreversible descent into cold. The chill first took hold in the high mountain ranges, a frost creeping down from the peaks before spilling out across the vast, low-lying plain. At the same time, a second, global force was at play. For reasons that remain a subject of intense scientific debate, the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere began to fall. The planet's insulating greenhouse canopy grew thin, and the Earth itself was entering a new, colder chapter in its long history. For Antarctica, this planetary shift was a death sentence. The process that would transform a continent of life into a wasteland of ice had been set in motion, and it could not be stopped. This was not the sudden violence of an asteroid impact. It was a slow, grinding agony, an extinction event that unfolded across millions of years. The first to fall were the most delicate, the children of a warmer world. The palm trees, which had thrived in the Eocene paradise, began their long retreat. Their broad, tender leaves, unaccustomed to the cold, could not withstand the first sharp frosts that now descended during the long, sunless polar night. Their seeds, falling on cooling soil, failed to germinate. The once sprawling palm groves thinned, surrendering their territory to hardier successors. In place of the subtropical jungle, a temperate forest rose. The dominant tree of this new epoch was the southern beech, Nothofagus. This resilient, deciduous species was built for survival. It could endure the long, frigid darkness of winter by shedding its leaves and entering a deep slumber. For millions of years, the Antarctic landscape resembled the modern forests of Patagonia or Tasmania. Dense canopies of beech trees covered the continent. Each autumn, their leaves would have set the hills ablaze in crimson and gold before carpeting the forest floor, a final burst of color against the coming white. The animal kingdom adapted or perished. The giant penguins, titans of a warmer ocean, vanished forever, unable to cope with the chilling waters. In their place, smaller, more robust species emerged, ancestors of the penguins we know today. But the cold was relentless. Around 14 million years ago, the next great stage of the transformation began. The glaciers, which until then had been confined to the highest peaks of the Transantarctic mountains, began their inexorable advance. They flowed down from the highlands, rivers of ice grinding their way onto the plains. The climate grew too severe even for the hardy beech forests. The trees staged a fighting retreat toward the coastlines, the last bastions of survivable temperatures. In their wake, a treeless tundra unfurled, a stark landscape of mosses, lichens, and low-growing shrubs, reminiscent of the modern coasts of Siberia or Alaska. Fossil evidence tells us the very last trees on the continent clung to life between 3 and 5 million years ago. They grew on the Antarctic Peninsula, the region that remains its warmest part today. These were the final outposts of a bygone green magnificence, the last sentinels of a world that was being erased. And then, the end came. The ice, which had claimed the mountains and the plains, finally consumed the coasts. The last forests were buried, the last soil frozen solid. The green continent was gone, entombed beneath a sheet of ice thousands of feet thick. What was once a living, breathing world became a silent, white monument, a cryogenic archive holding the ghosts of its verdant past, a testament to the immense, indifferent power of the planet to create and to destroy. It began with the cold, a slow, inexorable shift in the planet's breath. High on the central plateau of a continent once green and teeming with life, the temperature fell, and the first snowflakes of a new epoch began to settle. They were the seeds of an empire of ice. Accumulating over millennia, compacting under their own colossal weight, they formed a single monolithic ice sheet. Gaining mass and power in the heart of the continent, it began to move. This was a force of geology, a power that could indeed move mountains. Imagine a sheer wall of ice, rising several kilometers into the frozen sky, advancing with an agonizing slowness. Centimeter by centimeter, it crawled across the land, a crystalline tide of unimaginable weight. It was not a passive advance, it was an act of planetary-scale scouring. The ice sheet shaved the soil from the bedrock, it pulverized ancient stone into fine dust, and with a grinding finality, it erased every trace of the world that was. The last temperate rainforests, the final vestiges of tundra clinging to the highlands, all were consumed, buried beneath this monstrous, advancing mass. Ancient lakes, great full-flowing rivers that had carved their paths through flowering valleys for millions of years, all were annihilated, their water frozen, their beds ground into oblivion and sealed within an immense, icy sarcophagus. The Antarctica we know today, the white desert at the bottom of the world, was born in this glacial apocalypse. But the story does not end there. It merely retreats from sight, deep into the frozen archives of the planet. Today, science has found a way to see through the veil. Using ice-penetrating radar, researchers send pulses of energy down through the crushing depths, listening for the echoes that return from the hidden continent below. They are charting a ghost world, a landscape locked away from time. And the map they are revealing is nothing short of astonishing. Beneath the ice, they find the perfectly preserved channels of colossal river systems that once carried water across sun-drenched plains. They discover vast, interconnected mountain ranges, their peaks never touched by human eyes. And they have located hundreds of subglacial lakes, enormous bodies of liquid water insulated from the surface by the sheer thickness of the ice above. The most famous of these, Lake Vostok, is a world unto itself, a pristine aquatic environment that has not felt the warmth of the sun or been touched by the outer atmosphere for at least 15 million years. Somewhere down there, at a depth of 3, sometimes 4 kilometers, lie the last remnants of that lost world. Core samples, drilled at immense cost and effort, bring back ghosts from the deep. Petrified trunks of ancient trees, the resilient spores of ferns, the microscopic pollen of flowers that bloomed under a different sky. An entire buried biosphere waits patiently in the dark and the cold. It waits for the great climatic pendulum of the planet to swing once more in the opposite direction. This journey from an icebound present to a verdant past is a powerful reminder of the Earth's profound dynamism. The planet is not a static stage upon which life unfolds. It is a living, breathing organism, its face constantly reshaped by the deep forces of tectonics and the grand cycles of its climate. Continents drift, oceans open and close, and the global thermostat fluctuates from greenhouse heat to ice age chill. The story of a green Antarctica is proof that the most radical transformations are not only possible, but are an inherent part of our world's long biography. It demonstrates that the polar ice caps are not a permanent fixture, but merely a single, transient chapter. By studying this lost world, we gain a deeper understanding of the fragility of our own. We see the intricate dance between geology, oceanography, and atmosphere, and how a change in one component can trigger a chain reaction with consequences on a planetary scale. The history of Antarctica is a saga of birth, life, and death, a narrative written in the language of stone and ice. And perhaps, in a future so distant we cannot imagine it, the ice will retreat once more, and the buried forests of the South Pole will finally see the light of the sun. To gaze upon the Antarctic ice is to witness a world locked in time, an empire of white stretching to the horizon. Yet beneath this unforgiving surface lies the ghostly echo of another world entirely, a verdant land of forests and rivers lost to the deep past. This revelation does more than simply redraw ancient maps. It reshapes our understanding of the planet itself. It serves as a profound reminder that the landscapes we consider permanent are merely fleeting moments in the grand, cyclical story of Earth. The planet remembers what we have forgotten, and in its frozen heart, it holds the secrets of a world that challenges the very foundations of our own.